South Carolina has the best ally network I've ever seen. And I say that with some perspective. But this concept of lawyers, contractors, engineers, architects, electric providers, railroads, state and local economic development people, you just don't get that as you do here in other states. You don't. So congratulations on that, because it's really important. You know, it's interesting in economic development for all of you probably too. You come from all kinds of different backgrounds, and I know many of you so well and want to meet the rest of you today, but I wanted to talk a little about my background and how I got to where I am in this site selection business. And what's really interesting is it started right here on this piece of sand, because when I was 23 years old, my first assignment was at Wild Dunes. My first assignment was at Wild Dunes. I was working for a coastal engineering firm, and we dredged the marina. I don't know if you've been over there, but I was down here for 6 months dredging that marina and pumping the sand on the beach. So it's good to be back. But I was in that business for about 5 years and really got interested in how businesses made decisions and how consulting firms work. So I thought I'd go to business school. Maybe I'd learn something, because I didn't really know what a debit or a credit was. I mean, I could talk a little to Paul about fluid dynamics or other things, but I didn't know jack about debits and credits. So I went to business school, and in one of my classes, there was a professor named Jack Triff's. It was a case study class where you had to take this big complex problem and summarize what you saw and how to fix it in a page or two. And so I got close to my professor, Jack Triff's, and he came to me one day and he said, "Hey, Mark, I've got this assignment outside the business school you might want to consider. It's a consulting assignment. I have a contact who is trying to make a site location decision in Mexico, and they need somebody with reasonable sense to help them go through that analysis." So I had this side gig in business school whereby I analyzed where this company might ought to go in Mexico. I looked at the labor, I looked at the logistics. Frankly, I didn't know what the hell I was doing because I'd never done it before. But after that assignment, I came home and I told my then wife that when I finished school, I wanted to start a site selection company. And we had a couple of kids, and she in essence said, "The hell you are. You need to go out and get a job, because we got this family and we got to do this." So I agreed with that, and I got a job at the Department of Commerce. Got a job at the Department of Commerce down in the kind of the basement of the research division. And, you know, writing proposals and many of the things you're familiar with. And I said, you know what, I'm going to stay here for 2 years. Now I'm going to start this firm. And 2 years ended up being 9 years. And it came at the end when the new governor made me an offer I couldn't refuse, and I really had the opportunity to start this firm. So it's just an interesting journey, and I know you all have that in however you got here. The other thing I want to mention is, if you look at this title slide, my title has changed. It used to be founder and president. Now it's something like founder and client executive. I'm no longer president of my firm. I'm delighted about that fact. Jeanette Goldsmith is president of our firm, and we'll do an awesome job. The client executive part for me is I just get to work with clients now. I love that. That's going to give me more perspective and more experience. So I'm really, really excited about that. So James mentioned this guild study. Is Ford still here, or did he go bill some hours? Okay. I get that. I understand. James was right. I don't know if you all are familiar with the Site Selectors Guild. It's a group of site location consultants, mostly in the U.S., but from around the world. Ford, who I think you heard from yesterday, is a member. I'm a member. Jeanette Goldsmith from my firm's a member. Matt Shuhai from my firm is a member. And it's a group of people, if you know them, with really low egos. None of us have any egos. No egos there. But things are changing so quickly in the site selection world that every year they publish a report called the State of Site Selection. And so they did this in 2025 at the end of the year, and things are changing so rapidly now, they decided to do something called a pulse report, And I did get special secret permission to show you some charts and figures from this that will help give some perspective on what's going on in site selection. After that, I want to talk about kind of Mark's 10 things that I think really make a successful economic developer. And so whether you're in economic development in a state or rural or a utility or you're a lawyer or whatever you are, you're all economic developers, and this all applies to you. So let's talk about what's happening in the site selection industry. This is a polling of Site Selection Guild members that occurred just a month or so ago. So it's kind of the latest. I mean, a war has started since then, and there are a couple of other small things that are going on. But nevertheless, this is pretty recent data. And this chart here is showing just things in a broad sense about what's impacting site selection. And I know some of you've talked about this at the conference. You know, utility and infrastructure, tariffs, supply chain, geopolitics. You've seen all this at this conference. What this is saying is that 76%, for example, 76% of the respondents feel that utility and infrastructure capacity has the greatest impact of all the impacts, all the things that could impact site selection. 76%. Notice also the lighter blue is industrial and the darker blue is office. And most of the site selectors are industrial, so this has an industrial bias. So you can see here, you know, workforce is down about the middle, automation and AI is down at the bottom, but you can see here, I guess the big point is that 76% of the respondents of these site selectors think that infrastructure capacity is kind of the number one issue affecting site selection right now. Oops. Very complicated. Now, these same site selectors were asked a series of questions and rating them in terms of 1, I don't agree, or 5, I really agree. And I want to go through a couple of these questions. The first one, global tariff uncertainty is challenging or comprising project activity, timing, or both, compromising. So most people agreed with that, okay? Most people agreed that tariffs have been an issue, and that's really affected our business in the last year, our site selection business. And I forgot to mention more about Strategic Development Group in the beginning. I mean, we are a site selection firm. We do work across the US and some in Europe and Japan. And our background is heavy industrial typically. Steel mills, chemical plants, tire plants, that kind of thing. So that's the basis of our company. We did bring in Matt Shuhai about 2 years ago, who's a big life science pharma guy. And so we're starting to do some pharma locations. But so tariffs, people agree, that's a big issue. EDCs are more selective of the types of projects they pursue or support. 4.1 is a high rating. I mean, I've never seen in my career the number of states and localities that just say, hey, we don't want this. We don't want this. 20 years ago, everybody wanted everything. That's really become prevalent. It will become increasingly important to continually demonstrate, like it's hard to read, the integration of community development and economic development. Okay, so on and so forth. So tariffs are a big issue, and EDOs are more selective, et cetera. So you see this. My favorite slide is the next one. My favorite slide and your favorite slide would be, what are the top elimination factors in site selection right now? What are the top elimination factors? So 61% of the respondents said that utility infrastructure capacity, water, sewer, natural gas, I think James addressed all this yesterday, the day before, That's the top elimination factor. And as you've heard before, in our business, it's like a funnel. You start at the top of the funnel with a lot of sites, and you're trying to figure out how to get to one. You're trying to figure out how to get to one, and you're trying to figure out how to eliminate. So what this polling is saying is that this utility infrastructure capacity issue is the #1 elimination factor. Available suitable sites, that makes sense. No site, no place to go. That's an elimination factor. Workforce availability and quality. We're going down the list. Business environment, regulatory climate, et cetera. So you can see incentives, by the way, is the least impactful cutting mechanism. The least impactful cutting mechanism in this, okay? Natural disaster risk is down there too. So this is kind of the latest in the thinking of these site selectors, and it's really kind of interesting. But the utility infrastructure is difficult. We're having trouble finding sites across the country that have adequate rail service, electricity service, logistics, et cetera. That's what we're dealing with. So, let's get to the fun stuff. You know, I've just been wandering around for this 27 years and working with so many of you and so many economic developers and really beginning to think more and more about what makes an economic developer successful. And again, I'm not just talking about state and local and government and regional. I'm talking about all of us because we're all on that team. And so I picked out 10 things that I think are the most important to be successful in this business. And I just wanted to chat about those for a little bit. And the first one, as you see here with my friend, is competence. Competence. Now, competence means that whatever we do, we're really good at it. We're really up to date. We really know what's happening. That's different, you know, if you're a lawyer or an engineer, you're very good at that. If you're a statewide economic developer, you're a really good coordinator, et cetera. What I think is most interesting about competence and what makes us stronger in that regard is when we recognize when we're not competent. When we recognize when we're not competent, where the topics that we can't address or convey. A strength in terms of being competent here is assembling the team so that the team is competent. You know, our clients don't hire us because we know everything. Our clients don't hire us because we know all the answers. They hire us because we're going to find the answers and we're going to get the problem solved. They don't care how. They don't care how. They just know we're going to do it. So competence is important, and I wouldn't want anyone to think, especially in my case too, that, well, I've been doing this for a long time, I must be competent. Competence is something, regardless of your age and station, in my opinion, has to be honed and refined every day. The world is changing. The world is changing. So you have to be competent to be successful. You got to work hard. You got to work really hard. You got to push. One of the things I've learned from my kids, particularly my youngest son, is, you know, he worked at my firm for a while, and many of you know that. And he left after 2 or 3 years, and he said, you know, Dad, I'm just not going to work that hard. I'm just telling you. I'm just not going to work that hard. But one of the things I learned from my son, who's now working very successfully for an AI company, is he's constantly trying to figure out how to work smarter. How to work smarter. So working hard is good. It's an awesome characteristic that flags successful economic developers, but working smart and thinking about that is also very important. Trust. Economic developers who foster trust are incredibly successful. We did a market study at our firm, 5 or 10 years ago, and our clients were asked to rank Strategic Development Group in terms of the things they thought were most important that we delivered. And the two highest ranking things were competence and trust. Competence and trust, because in the decisions that you all are working on with your clients and with us in the site selection business, companies don't make these decisions every week. I guess maybe unless you're Amazon. But most companies are making decisions that are 50-year decisions. They're really important. If you make the wrong decision, you bleed for 50 years. You bleed for 50 years. You're not competitive for 50 years. It's the most important thing a company does in so many respects. And it's the most important thing that the executive that's assigned to manage that project for the company does, because he or she may be doing one or two of these projects in a lifetime, and if they get it wrong, it's a problem. They get fired, their career's dead. So these people, this giraffe is trusting us. All of us, we are the elephant. The giraffe's on our back, and we're walking on a tightrope. And so when we foster trust in this world with our clients, whoever we're dealing with, it's critically important. Intuition. This is one of my favorite ones. I don't think people necessarily recognize it, but my definition of intuition is being able to see out in the future, seeing a situation and knowing what's going to happen when others can't, seeing what others can see when others can't. Our clients, your clients love this stuff. They love this stuff because you can predict what's going to happen politically, you can predict what's going to happen from a cost perspective. You can keep them out of trouble in that regard. So here's an example. I had a client talk to me one day. He was so happy with what we were doing. He was talking about an economic development group, and he said, you know what? Those economic developers, they knew who the prick was in the permitting department, and they flagged them and helped us get through it. I mean, you guys, you know where the holes are, where the challenges are, and that intuition's really important. You know, about 10 years ago, one more story, I like stories. We had an assignment in the Midwest. We like Japanese companies, kind of a big assignment for us. And we had 3 sites that we'd shortlisted. And we went with our client on their plane to see the sites. Now, the first site was my second favorite, and that visit went really well. And we got back in the plane with our client with the second site. Second site was a train wreck, total train wreck. Nobody was communicating with anybody. The community, the utilities, everything was discombobulated. People didn't get along. Got back on the plane. I'm sitting across from the client. We take off. He says, Mark-san, what did you think about what you heard in that room? And I said, well, I think we're going to have problems with schedule. I don't think we'll meet our deadlines. I think we're going to have some cost issues. He said, well, then let's cut the site and move on. I mean, that's how quickly those decisions make. And he was trusting my intuition as to how this would unfold. So intuition is a powerful thing that you offer your clients, your constituents. Communication. The next thing that I think makes us powerful as economic developers. You know, most people think of communication as, I guess, more outward in terms of, well, I'm a good speaker or I'm a good writer. Maybe I'm a good communicator. But it goes much deeper than this, I think, in when we press this ourselves to make ourselves better at our businesses. Communication is definitely those things, but it's also the ability to listen and interpret what you're hearing. About 30 years ago, I went to Germany with my business mentor that many of you know, and we were visiting my favorite car company, which later became my first client, but visiting when I was working for the state, and we had a meeting with Johann and Helmut in Munich. And we sit down at the table with them, and we're talking about the new interchange, and we're talking about a training center, and these guys scared the heck out of me. I mean, I was 35 years old. They looked like they could be on top of a Panzer tank. They just scared the life out of me. So we get out of the meeting, and my business mentor says to me, "What did you hear in there that they didn't say? What did you hear in there that they didn't say?" I said, "What are you talking about? What are you talking about?" "Well, did you see the way he pulled on his ear when you mentioned so-and-so and Johann started tapping his pencil?" He wasn't comfortable with that. So he was reading them the whole time by their body language, by their eye movements, by everything. Not to get into business or learn their secrets, but to learn the client, to learn what the client was thinking, what concerned them, where we could improve. So this element of communication, in addition to writing and speaking and all that, is critical. And the best of the best in the economic development field take that, they take the intuition. We're going to talk about a few more, but it's an elevated ability. It's an elevated ability. It makes people better. So communication. One of the problems I have in the site location business, and it's never ever in South Carolina, is that local communities don't know what they want. They don't know what they want, meaning we have a project, it appears attractive, and they're not sure they really want it. I mean, it might be big, or it might be a steel mill, but they don't know. And that's really dangerous for us in our business, because part of what we have to do, especially in the beginning, is kind of smoke out whether a community is going to embrace and love us, And a lot of times I find economic developers, never in South Carolina, are very gracious and seemingly indicate that they love something, but then after our clients spend $500,000 on engineering, site options, and other things, they say, "You know what, the community really doesn't support this." Well, we don't need that. And this issue of, do I want the donut or the apple? Good economic developers know what they want. They know a good project when they see it, and they go after it. Full speed, full stop. But they don't mind saying, "That's just not a good fit for us. We love you, but it's just not a good fit." That takes you up above the rest. The beer wagon. Well, if there's nothing in the wagon to sell, it's a pretty empty day, right? You got to have something in the wagon to sell, whether it's beer or a nice site or your labor force or your electricity rates or your gas service, whatever it is, you got to have something in the wagon to sell. You got to have something in the wagon to sell. And it's so interesting, never in South Carolina, communities are actively marketing things, but they have zero product. They have zero a lot of things. So the key here is to have assets that people want, clients want, prospects want, and figure out which clients love your assets. And oh, by the way, they don't mind your liabilities so much, because all of us have liabilities. It's kind of like Sue. She loves me. I've got a few assets, but I've got a few liabilities. You've got to find somebody that loves you for your assets and doesn't care about your liabilities. And it's the same way if you're in a rural community. You got to figure out what you can sell. You got to figure out what to put on the wagon. I see so many rural communities and other places selling stuff that they have they're never going to make. It's never going to work. It's going to be a frustrating experience. Time. Great economic developers know and refine their ability to optimally compress the time of a project. Time is the biggest deal killer of projects. Time kills all projects eventually. Kills all projects eventually. Why does that happen? Well, gosh, I mean, maybe there's a great deal and the public administration changed locally on a statewide basis, and the new people say, well, I don't know what incentive package, I don't know who negotiated that, but we're not doing that. Or too much time goes by and there's a new executive, and he or she doesn't want his or her fingerprints on that deal. They cancel the project. So, I see in our world, probably principally industrial, although we love retail, principally industrial, 4 to 6 to 9 months is a kind of a normal time. Too little time doesn't allow the client and you to do the due diligence. Too much time kills a deal. Kills a deal every time. So you, all of us, whatever our role, have to continue to push the time. I have a client that about 10 years ago asked us to move them out of my home state of Maryland to the South. And we went through an extensive search. We got down to 2 communities, one in South Carolina, one in Tennessee, and we really liked the one in South Carolina a great deal. And what happened in our negotiations with the community was it just went on too long. They weren't turning around documents. They sent back extensive red lines for things we'd already seen. It was taking more and more and more time. The interesting thing about this particular client, and they come in all shapes and flavors. This particular client was privately held, grew 10 to 15% year over year. They're making money, still building buildings. And they were very religious. Just a really interesting flavor. They built a new headquarters. They have a huge worship center at their headquarters building. They have 2 pastors working at their manufacturing and R&D facility to minister to their people. 2 pastors. Have you ever heard of such a thing? So in this case, we're going through this issue of not getting our documents, and the CEO of the company calls me on a Saturday. He says, Mark, I've prayed about it, and we're canceling that site and that project. I know we've been negotiating with them for 6 months, but we're done. We're going to start over. Time kills all deals, and it has to be managed. Hiring. Hiring is so critical to all of our success in economic development. Now, I think that often people are always looking for competence and experience when they hire, and I think that's right. That's really important. But my favorite factor that I think is often ignored is desire. Because you can be as smart as you can be as competent as you can be, but if you don't have a constant and thriving desire, it zeroes out the rest of it. And so hiring people that are competent, experienced, and have a huge tendency of desire to get things done, to learn what they don't already know, to figure things out, is just incredibly important for us in the economic development community. Now, great economic developers get up every morning, suited up like this, to work with their clients. They got a shield, they got a sword. They're going to protect that client, typically, I'm going to say from embarrassment, from mistakes. I mean, as I said earlier in the trust piece, these company representatives are, you know, they're going to have to get up in front of their boards and present these projects. And if, for example, they've been evaluating a site under our direction for 6 months, and it turns out there was a fatal flaw that existed that whole time, site could have been eliminated on day one. That's a problem. We're going to get fired. And they're going to be incredibly embarrassed. They do not want to be embarrassed. They don't want to be embarrassed in their corporate setting. They don't want to go to a public meeting to find out they're going to get shish kebabbed by people who hate their project and embarrassed publicly. What they want for all of us to do is to tell them privately when we discovered problems through our intuition. Tell them privately, hey, there's this problem, and this is how I suggest we fix it. Get it all done on the side, not out in the open, not exposed to their leadership, not exposed to the public. So these are kind of the 10 things that I've been thinking about that I think are, I'm going to say, I hope a little further above what we've been exposed to, because I just think they're really important to our success. Now, James did mention I've been peddling this book, and I wanted to mention it for a second. If you haven't read it, please read it. If you read it and you like it, please rate it well on Amazon. If you read it and you don't like it, please rate it well on Amazon. The book's about economic development and site selection. I wrote another version 5 years ago, and I updated it and I expanded it. It's got a lot of interesting stories in it. There are 4 new chapters, one on energy, one on deal killers. Time is one of those I highlighted here, but there's so many things that kill deals that when we're really in our game, we might see these things and mitigate them or say we're out. But deal killers and the maturity and experience to understand when something's not right, when others don't, it's really important. There's another chapter I really like called What Clients Want. What clients want. And some of that's contained in what you saw. But I really think whatever business we're in, whether it's economic development or the legal side or the engineering side, clients are funky, man. They are way funky. They don't always tell you what they want. They're hard to understand. Sometimes they don't communicate. They don't return calls or emails. Clients are funky, but they're ours. They're ours, and we have to help them succeed. And so I think in our business, together, because we're all in the same boat, we're all trying to locate great deals and optimum locations and set up some great retail. We just have to go down that road. So that's what I had there, James. And I think we've got, 15 minutes or so for questions. But please don't forget, these 10 thoughts. I'd love to know what you think about them because I'm trying to drill down into that. The site selection world right now, I'll mention that too in terms of what you saw from the Guild with the double secret presentation. Our pipeline in our company it's got a lot of projects in it, but many of them are mature. We need new projects. And I don't know how it is in your businesses. Wars don't help us. Tariffs don't help us. I mean, our automotive business is near death. That used to be 30% of our business. We've done other things. We announced a quantum computing headquarters in Boca Raton, Florida last month. Who would think Strategic Development Group would announce after working, who would have thought it? So we have to be nimble, but from a site selection and economic development perspective, I would just love to see a little more consistency in the geopolitics and other things that are going on. So,
Mark, can you go back to the guild slides, site selection priorities?
Let me see if I can operate this, James.
You got it.
Ooh, I like that one. Don't you like that
there
one?
you go.
Hang on, let me get back. Wrong button.
Okay, so on the power side, there's these energy-intensive projects that are going everywhere.
I know.
So can you share, what are you seeing from a capacity standpoint with providers, Southeast, Midwest? What are you seeing out there compared to South Carolina?
I think South Carolina, you have different entities. Some are more proactive and helpful than others. There are issues I'm sure you highlighted in your, the supply chain and so on and so forth. But kind of globally, James, in our business, and I'm not referring specifically to South Carolina here, it's hard for us to get the ear of utilities anymore. We have these measly old $600 million, 100 megawatt projects, and if we're in Iowa or wherever, they are so inundated, I think, with other inquiries that it's just hard to get their attention. So you get the delays of the infrastructure, you get the fact that you've got these stabs, I'm talking about in other utilities, not in South Carolina, that are overwhelmed with inquiries and how to deal with it. Those two factors, for us it used to be, well, if you're going to build a chemical plant, then we'll have and we need to relocate transmission. We'll have it there by the time we spend 2 years building it. Well, that's not the case anymore. So it's really difficult for us. And so what that means, and with this number one site selection factor, if we have a project with, I don't know, a load over 25 megawatts, we're going to start searching for utilities first. And we're not even data center people. We're going to start, that's going to be the cut. I mean, in this business where there's a funnel, you're trying to cut sites as quickly as you can. I mean, they're have-to-haves, meaning a project absolutely has to have a certain factor, and nice-to-haves. And if electricity is a nice-to-have or a have-to-have, we're going to try to assess that early and cut the site if it's not going to work. We're in the middle of that now. I mean, I've got a call at 11 to, big project in the utilities, and we're not looking in South Carolina, but we're going to cut sites because we can't. Hell, we don't know if we'll ever get electricity.
Questions?
How about something controversial? I love those the best. I think it's interesting, a couple of thoughts about South Carolina. I've noticed more in my dealings with South Carolina. Tony, you're the guy, right? But I sense there's more selectivity in what this state wants to do than I've ever seen. And I'm not, that's probably a good thing. I think selectivity is good. Knowing what you want is good. But we're seeing that in a lot of places. Seeing that in a lot of places. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I would echo that, Mark. Counties are turning down projects now, and I don't have a problem with that. Thank you. So give me an opportunity to throw it at someone when I'm done talking. But counties are turning down projects. I'll go not all, like I said, not all of them and not everything, but I'll approach some of my county economic development partners, and I'll lay out the project, and they'll say, we don't want that. It's not right for us. And that, like I said, that's perfectly. I'd rather have that up front, and that's perfectly cool. But a few years ago, you never would have got that.
We were working on a pretty large project in South Carolina last year, and in a county, and I'm not going to talk about what county, but in a county that traditionally, loved projects and was incredibly aggressive. And their comment was, we don't want too many jobs. We don't want too many jobs. So we love your capital investment, but we don't want all those jobs. And I get that, schools, roads, whatever. It's just a little different. But it's so important for us, that apple and that donut slide, to assess early on, are they really going to love us? And then the hard part is, a lot of times they say they do in the beginning, and you really gotta look through that, because spending the time and the money to go through it's really difficult for our clients. So, Will.
So, if we're having all these problems with electrical utilities.
I didn't say we were having any problems with electric utilities.
So electricity seems to be in short supply across the country. Any thoughts on why? I mean, obviously large projects, data centers, but were we just asleep at the switch and all of a sudden the tide came in, or what happened, in your opinion?
Well, if you order the book for your board, Will. I mean, there's some graphs in there. I mean, the load has been relatively flat for a while, and it's peaked up and it's accelerating. I don't know that I'm going to tell you anything new. There's the AI surge, there's more automation, et cetera. What's kind of interesting to me is working with our quantum computing client that we announced in Boca Raton last month. Their theory is that they're going to figure out how to make AI much more efficient from an electricity use perspective. That's a really interesting kind of dilemma that's over my head, because if there's a lot of capacity built and somehow there's a miraculous way of reducing the need for it, that's just kind of interesting.
Can I, Will, to your point, I don't know anybody smarter than Rob Hochstetler in our industry. Yeah, Burl. Did you hear his question, Rob? Will, can you repeat your question?
What happened to our power supply?
He wants a box. So he's talking about, wow, great throw.
Nice.
So he's talking about
Nice.
The utilities in general. How did everybody become so overwhelmed with power consumption? And were we asleep at the wheel? Did people see this coming?
Oh, that's a great question. And I understand that electrical infrastructure takes a while and has a high capital cost to it.
Yeah, that's a great question. Energy is needed all over the world. And so gas turbines, as we're trying to close coal in some countries, gas turbines were selling out like crazy. And then it just took more and more time with the administration change. Even gas was under the influence here in the States of, can we even afford to build natural gas? So everybody was on pause. And then the data centers went crazy simultaneously. And not just in the United States, all over the country. So I wouldn't say we were asleep at the wheel as much as there were some forces that changed. And there's still a lot of pressure, I think, on administration change, because there is not set rules on emissions, air emissions. And now water as well, but we're dealing with water in that we're just not using very much anymore, not like we used to. The nice thing is that we build gas turbines in South Carolina. So that's one of the nice things. But we're competing now with Saudi Arabia, who used to just burn natural gas off, and now they're using it to make electricity. All of the Middle Eastern countries, they bought up all the spots to build the natural gas turbines. So we're looking everywhere for power. So I wouldn't say asleep at the switch as much as just a lot of factors coming together.
Hey, James.
And your project and other projects like it have eaten up a lot of capacity. And we've got two issues. One is we've got generation capacity that's tight, and we have transmission capacity in parts of the state that's really tight. And the timelines to get those done, these next couple of years are critical. for you to be communicating with your co-op leadership or the power team and us being at the table essentially first. If it's an energy-driven decision, having our family at the table immediately, I think is super critical.
James, the last thing I'll say, I'll set this down, is in our country right now, we just absolutely can't close coal. It can't happen today.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Thank you. I have a quick question for.
You throw it to me when you're done?
Sorry?
You gonna throw it back to me when you're done? Because
We'll see how you answer.
that toss over there, I'm still thinking about that.
Two scenarios. A company looking at a facility, their first facility in the U.S., and a larger company looking to add a facility in the U.S. The larger companies, the BASFs and the Bosches of the world. In looking at the list and in your conversations with executives, how important or relevant is political party affiliation at the state level or even at the congressional level in driving decisions? For the first company looking for just one facility, maybe they favor a Republican administration or a Republican state or red state over a blue or a purple state. For the second scenario, where the larger company is looking not to put all their eggs in one particular state, but to spread those out so that they have political support and advocates in Congress.
Are we talking about foreign companies or
Yes,
US?
foreign companies. Foreign companies.
Yeah.
You know, because if you look at BMW, BMW has manufacturing in South Carolina, they have research on the West Coast, they have the headquarters in New Jersey, so on and so forth. And like BMW, Volkswagen, and others, Siemens is a great example of that. I mean, Siemens almost resembles a defense company in this country.
I think especially big foreign companies like BMW, our first client, they're investing for the long haul. I mean, it's probably more than a 50-year decision. And so I think an administration change is just a blip in the data for them. And even if we think, some might think the current administration's a bit different than the previous ones, but I tend to think that the decision is longer term than that.
I'm not referring to federal, I'm referring to state and congressional leadership, right?
I don't, you know, what people looking at South Carolina, state, et cetera. South Carolina, in my 35 years here, there have been more Republicans than Democrats in state positions. But regardless of the party in South Carolina, the flavor has generally been pro-business, pro-economic development support. And and we're asked to comment on things like this because we're here, right? We're the experts. And if I were asked that question, in particular, I'm going to say with South Carolina, it's been a good, steady run regardless of the political affiliation. It's been a good, steady run. There's another, now that we're talking about foreign, I wanted to mention it related to the electricity question, related to energy. We have a client now, and what I love about the business, or part of what I love, is we get to ask people why they're looking, what's going on. And so we're working with a pretty large European chemical maker. And they're going to locate, and they're frankly going to locate near here. But when we asked them what's going on, they said, well, our customers are in the U.S. We need a presence in the U.S. I mean, we've checked that box before. The whole Ukraine, Russia, natural gas thing, we now see the U.S. as a stable place, and we use a lot of natural gas. And you ask them about tariffs, they say, well, it would be better if we were in the U.S. because we have so many clients here, but that's just icing on the cake. If that happens, great. If it doesn't happen, we're good. But most of these decisions are longer term. I got to tell you, and I know the foreign side, your side, but with privately held companies, we're often, well, it's not uncommon to get a call to say we want to look in red states. We're done. You know, I don't see that with large public companies, just with smaller companies that have quick decision making. They don't report to a board. All righty.
No other questions?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark.